"Sir, my baby sister is freezing," the little boy said. The CEO wrapped them in his coat and took them home. The snow was falling in thick, silent curtains over the city that December night, blanketing the park benches and streetlights in a hush that made the world feel strangely still. But on one particular bench, beneath a flickering lamppost, a small boy sat clutching something so fragile, so precious, that the sight of him alone was enough to stop a grown man's heart cold in his chest. He couldn't have been older than 7. His thin jacket was soaked through at the shoulders, his boots were 2 sizes too big, and his small arms were wrapped around a bundle of gray cloth that trembled and whimpered against his chest, a newborn baby, no more than a few weeks old, crying the weak, breathless cry of a child who had already spent too long in the cold. The boy wasn't crying himself. He was just sitting there, rocking gently, whispering something down to the baby with a kind of quiet desperation that only children who have known real fear ever learn. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the idea that one moment can change everything, like this channel, Kindness Corner, share this story, leave a comment below, and subscribe so stories like this one always find their way to you. Now let's continue. His name was Noah. And 3 days before that night, his entire world had collapsed without warning. Noah's mother, a young woman named Elise who had worked 2 jobs and smiled through every hard day, had suffered a sudden medical emergency after bringing her newborn daughter, Lily, home from the hospital. Neighbors had called an ambulance. Social services had been contacted. But in the chaos of forms and phone calls and overworked caseworkers, Noah and little Lily had slipped through the cracks, left in the care of a distant neighbor who meant well but fell asleep by 9, never noticing when Noah quietly bundled up his baby sister and walked out into the night, convinced in his 7-year-old heart that he needed to find someone to help her. She had been crying for hours. She felt like ice. And Noah, who had watched his mother soothe Lily by walking her under the open sky on warm evenings, had done the only thing he knew. He had taken her outside, hoping the world would somehow answer. The park was mostly empty at that hour. A few distant figures moved along the far path, collars turned up, heads down against the wind. Nobody stopped. Nobody looked twice at the small boy on the bench. The city moved around him like a river around a stone, indifferent and cold. That was when Marcus Hale turned the corner. Marcus was 38 years old and had not walked through that particular park in nearly a decade. He was the kind of man whose name appeared on business journals and whose schedule was managed down to the minute, the CEO of a logistics company that employed thousands, a man who had built something real from nothing, who had grown up in a neighborhood not entirely different from the one Elise had raised her children in. That night, his driver had taken an unfamiliar route due to a road closure, and Marcus, restless from a long day of boardroom negotiations, had asked to be let out 2 blocks early so he could walk and breathe and remember, for a moment, that the world was larger than conference rooms. He saw the boy from 20 feet away and slowed his step without knowing why. Something animal and ancient in him registered it, the smallness of the figure, the careful way the child held his arms, the sound that drifted through the snow. A baby's cry. Thin and desperate and cold. Marcus crossed the distance in seconds. He crouched down in front of the bench without a word at first, just looking, taking in the scene with eyes that had seen enough of life to understand immediately that this was not a moment for questions, it was a moment for action. The boy looked up at him with enormous brown eyes that held no fear, only exhaustion and a plea so raw it required no language whatsoever. And then the child spoke the words that would rearrange something permanently inside Marcus Hale's chest. He said that his baby sister was freezing. He said it simply, quietly, like a small soldier making his final report. He said he didn't know what else to do. Marcus did not hesitate. He pulled off his long wool coat, the one his assistant had picked out, the one that had cost more than Noah's mother made in a month, and he wrapped it around both children in one motion, tucking it beneath the baby, cocooning Noah inside its warmth alongside her. He pulled out his phone and called not his driver first, not his assistant, but emergency services, giving the location clearly and calmly. Then he sat down on that cold, snow-dusted bench beside the boy and he stayed there, one arm sheltering both children, until the ambulance lights appeared at the end of the street. But the story did not end there. Because Marcus rode with them. Because when the paramedics stabilized little Lily and confirmed she was going to be all right, cold-stressed but unharmed, safe now, and when the social worker on duty explained that Noah had no immediate family who could be reached that night, Marcus looked at the boy sitting in the hospital waiting room wrapped in a thermal blanket, still holding his sister's sock in one small fist, and he made a decision that surprised even himself. He called his lawyer. He called his housekeeper. He arranged emergency temporary guardianship for that night, and then the next, and then he began making calls that people with his kind of resources could make, calls that found Elise within 48 hours, stabilized in a hospital 2 districts over, recovering from a brain aneurysm that the doctors said she had survived against considerable odds. Calls that made sure she had the best neurological care available. Calls that ensured Noah and Lily were not placed in a system that might have separated them. In the weeks that followed, Marcus visited Elise as she recovered. He arranged for a nurse to help when she came home. He set up an account that would cover her bills for a year so she could heal without the terror of debt crushing her before she had the strength to stand. He never made it a production. He never called a publicist. He simply did it the way people do things when they are acting from somewhere genuine, quietly, practically, completely. Noah asked him once, during one of his visits, why he had stopped that night. Most people hadn't stopped. Marcus was quiet for a long moment before he answered. He said that he had been a boy once who needed someone to stop, and someone had, a stranger, a neighbor, a man whose name he still remembered, and that sometimes the entire direction of a life depends on whether one person decides that another person's crisis is also their business. Elise came home in February. The tree in her small yard was just beginning to bud. Noah stood on the porch holding Lily, who was round and warm and loud and perfect, and when his mother came up the front walk, still moving slowly, still healing, he ran to her with the specific joy of a child who has survived something he didn't fully understand and come out the other side into the light. If this story moved something in you, if it reminded you that kindness costs nothing and changes everything, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to believe in people today, drop a comment below telling us what part touched you most, and subscribe to Kindness Corner so we can keep bringing you stories that remind us all what we are capable of. Comment the word "quote" below if you believe one small act of kindness can change a life forever. Because somewhere out there, on a cold bench under a flickering light, a child is waiting. And the only question that ever really matters is whether we stop.